We had more wealth back then as well. And so I want to just kind of go into it a little bit. We start off with Proverbs 3:31. And it reads, envy thou not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. So that was our problem when we integrated. We wanted to be, amongst white people, among the other nations. The Most High, he commanded us to be separate from other people. To get Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And it reads, and now Israel, what does the Most High thy power require of thee? But to fear the Most High thy power, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Most High thy power with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Most High and his statutes, which I command thee this day for thy good. So the Most High didn't tell us this just, put a burden on us or just to give us something to do. He told us these things for our good. And, when we don't follow his commandments, we get, we feel the consequences of that. Let me get one more. Get Leviticus chapter 20, 26. And it reads, and ye shall be holy unto me, for I, the Most High, am holy, and have severed you from other people, that ye should be mine. So when the Most High severed us, so when we try to join ourselves to other nations, then, we end up getting destroyed. So it's best that we keep these commandments for our good. And when we integrate it, and for the most part, we fail miserably. And that's what I'm about to go into and get one more scripture. Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 15, verse through 16. And it reads, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Most High thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. I'm about to jump into some of these curses that we face in the city of Detroit. So this is an article from the Washington Post, and it's titled, "The Black and White Economic Divide is as Wide as it Was in 1968. In many ways, the gap between the finances of Blacks and whites is still as wide in 2020 as it was in 1968, when a run of landmark civil rights legislation culminated in the Fair Housing Act in response to centuries of unequal treatment of African Americans in nearly every part of society and business. In the decades since, white wealth has soared while Black wealth has stagnated. Many have pointed out the far larger share of white millionaires than Black, but even among the middle class, the inequalities are stark. In 1968, a typical middle class Black household had $6,674 in wealth compared to $70,786 for the typical middle class white household. These numbers are adjusted for inflation as well. In 2016, the typical middle class Black household had $13,024 in wealth versus $149,000 for the median white household, an even larger gap in percentage terms. So, a lot of people, they thought, once we integrated, that our wealth would catch up with theirs. While our wealth doubled, but, we only had $6,000 of equivalent in wealth. Theirs doubled as well. So yeah, the gap became even larger. The historical data revealed that no progress has been made in reducing income and wealth inequalities between Black and white households over the past 70 years. Also, as of 2016, the most recent year of which data is available, you would have to combine the net worth of 11.5 Black households to get the net worth of a typical white household. So the average white family has 11.5 times the wealth as the average Black family. But that's what we wanted to integrate into. Give a scripture. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 12, and it reads, "For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it." So yeah, you see, money is a defense, and we just don't have it. Get one more scripture. Because really, integration was just us selling out, for some cheap imitation of what wealth really is. Because we wanted to be like our oppressor instead of getting this wisdom that the Most High gave us, and we would have known better. This is Wisdom of Solomon 8, verse 5. If riches be a possession to desire in life, to be desired in this life, what is richer than wisdom that worketh all things? So this is the wisdom that we should be possessing, that we should be pursuing before we pursue, physical riches upon this earth. Because you see, even though we more educated than we were back then, it all amounts to nothing because we don't have this wisdom that's right here in this book. You keep reading. Just keep going in the article. Everyone knows that people of color are at an incredible economic disadvantage, but few realize it's as bad or worse than it was before civil rights, said Karen Petro, managing partner of Federal Financial Analytics. Black Lives Matter has shown that we don't have Selma Bridge anymore, but the situation today is profoundly troubling. Wealth takes into account not just the wages that people earn for work, but homes, stock market investments, and other assets they have. More wealth makes for a comfortable, safer living. And more importantly, it is passed on to the next generation. That goes into money being a defense. Their parents' wealth gives many white children a boost at birth, an advantage many of their Black peers lack. Higher education has long been touted as a ticket to the middle class, but for Black Americans, that has not been true as one might hope. The typical Black household headed by someone with an advanced degree has less wealth than a white household with only a high school diploma. See that? It's, we pursue degrees and we don't really have the necessary knowledge that we need. And, a lot of people pursue degrees in things that don't make sense to pursue. Like all your humanities and fine arts don't make sense to get a degree in that. It's really, so you end up in a bunch of debt, $100,000 in debt at least. That's just if you go for 4 years. And then you end up with a job that pay you like, you just have a high school diploma. So yeah, you end up worse off than someone with just a high school diploma that just work hard. This next section, the coronavirus crisis hit Blacks especially hard. The first economic victims of the COVID-19 crisis were the service industries that employed disproportionate numbers of Black and brown workers. As a result, the great lockdown this spring, fewer than half all Black adults had a job. So we had just Black people had a unemployment higher than 50%. The latest Labor Department figures from April show that 48.8% of Black adults were employed, tying 2 months in the early 1980s for the worst rate on record. See that? Get another scripture. Book of Isaiah, chapter 30, starting from the top. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Most High, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin unto sin. So, everyone bought into that dream that, if I just get a degree, then, I'll be fine. But, that was their cover. The degree is their covering. That walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt be your confusion. So a lot of people, they can't even understand that. They get this degree and their life still, they still at the bottom. They still struggling from paycheck to paycheck. Hard to understand that. But, trust in the system without understanding, and, you end up just in debt and confused, trying to figure out where you went wrong. Drop down to verse 12. Wherefore, thus saith the Holy One of Israel, because ye despise this word and trust in oppression and perverseness and stay thereon, therefore this iniquity shall be to you as a breach ready to fall, swelling out in a high wall, whose breaking cometh suddenly at an instant. See that? So again, when we trust in our oppressor, we trust in his ways. We want to be like him, integrating his system. Most High, we just make a fool of ourselves. I'll get one more scripture before I move on. Get the book of Numbers 11. And this is when the children of Israel were in the wilderness. Get a Numbers 11, verse 4. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. See, this is the children of Israel when they were in the wilderness. They had just come out of Egypt. And they think about all the food they had, different types of, trinkets and things. And, they complain. Drop down to verse 10. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Most High was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased. See that when we tried to integrate, make the Most High angry with us because we had our own, we had our own systems, our own schools, our own hospitals, our own everything. But it wasn't good enough. We wanted to be under Esau. We wanted to be with the other nations. And it angered the Most High. And, you're seeing the results of that to this day. Get another article. This is from the Detroit Free Press. Detroit had 18 Black-owned and operated hospitals why they vanished. This year, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History set health and wellness as the theme for Black History Month. In Detroit, the history of Black healthcare is largely a saga of Black physicians who established a parallel medical universe alongside the white hospitals that shunned them and their Black patients. Let's skip down. Title of this section, Jim Crow Medicine. The stark racial disparities in healthcare were not a phenomenon unique to Detroit. After the Civil War, the Freedmen's Bureau, a federal agency founded in 1865, opened 90 hospitals in the former Confederacy, treated thousands of newly freed African Americans, most of whom had never received professional medical care. It was the first federal healthcare system in the United States. Howard University Hospital in Washington, D.C. began as the Freedmen's Hospital. Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first Black woman to be licensed as a doctor in the United States, became a pioneering physician in Freedmen's Hospital in Virginia. But the initiative was short-lived. By 1872, the federal government had ended the Freedmen's Bureau, whose critics worried that it would engender a culture of government dependency among its previously enslaved clients. Most of the Freedmen's Hospital, including the one that employed Crumpler, were closed, even as cholera and smallpox outbreaks raged. So you see the first group of government-funded hospitals were shut down because, they thought it was going to create dependency. Kind of like the welfare system do today. So keep reading. Black doctors in the North were the first to mount a serious response to Jim Crow medicine. In 1891, an African-American surgeon named Daniel Hale founded Providence Hospital in Chicago, the first Black-owned and operated hospital in the United States. It became a principal training school for Black nurses who were blocked from admission to the nursing schools that served white students. So you see, they shut our government-funded hospitals down, and we created our own, as we should. Skip down. Since most chapters of the American Medical Association barred Black physicians from membership, African-American doctors established their own medical organization, the National Medical Association, in 1895. The Allied Medical Society was the Detroit chapter of the NMA. Led by Dr. James Ames, the Allied Medical Society established the first Black nonprofit hospital in Detroit, Dunbar Hospital, in 1918 at the corner of Frederick and St. Antoine Streets. The hospital's physicians included prominent Detroit doctors like Robert Greenidge, Albert Cleave Sr., Lloyd Bailey, and Herbert Sims. The hospital had 27 beds and an operating room managed by Dr. Alexander Turner, the first African-American surgeon in Detroit, who would join Mercy's Remus Robinson in leading the integration of Grace Hospital, which later merged with the Jewish-founded Sinai Hospital and became Sinai Grace. So you see that? We established our own medical association in 1895. Some 40 years out of slavery? Skip down. Altogether, there were 18 Black-owned and operated hospitals in Detroit. Black doctors who fought racism in the healthcare industry became some of the city's most important civil rights activists, although many of their contributions remain unheralded. It was a good article. There's a lot of good history in it. You skip down a little bit. There were 500 black hospitals in the United States at the height of segregation, 18 in Detroit. Today, there is only one, Howard University Medical Center. So you see that? We integrated and we lost all our hospitals, 500 hospitals, and we lost all of them except for one. See that? That's what happened when we want to join hands with the oppressor. And I found this article on Detroit Free Press. And it's funny because there are a lot of white people in the comments. They were actually laughing at the fact that we had hospitals before segregation and then that we didn't have any after. During segregation, then integrated and lost all our hospitals. They were actually laughing at that. I just wanted to bring this out. It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether the Most High shall lead thee. And see that? That they were literally laughing at us for that. Drop down to verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. And that's exactly what didn't happen. We wanted to join their system because theirs looked better. And we lost ourselves. We came down low, and they kept going up high. They doubled their wealth. So we lost everything. Get one more scripture. But that just come to us, like I said, we wanted to be like our oppressor. We have a respect to a person. That's a big problem that we have. We want to be like white people because, they have more money. They're richer than we are. But the Most High, he's not like that. You get Acts, book of Acts, chapter 10, verse 34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth I perceive that Yah is no respecter of persons. So, we favor them. We have favoritism towards them because, white is white. They're richer than us. So we shouldn't be like that. We just end up destroying ourselves. You get one more article. This is WXYZ Detroit. Title of this article is Meet the Man Trying to Bring Detroit's First Black-Owned Grocery Store to the City in Years. So at this time, we had no Black-owned grocery stores at all. Zero, none. A Detroit entrepreneur is fighting food insecurity by trying to bring healthy food to one Detroit neighborhood. His grocery store will be the first Black-owned grocery store in the city since 2014. This article was written in 2001. There are 72 grocery stores in the city of Detroit, but many people who live in the city aren't satisfied with their shopping options. 72, and not one is owned by a Black person. And Detroit is majority Black, over 80%, if I can recall. A study by the Food Fair Network found that Detroiters often go to the suburbs for their groceries, spending more than $200 million outside of the city each year. Now just imagine if we took that $200 million and spent it with each other. And that's just what's going outside the city. That ain't even counting just going to other nations. Now, a man with a plan for a Black-owned grocery store in Detroit is looking to keep some of that money in the city, and he's doing it all through crowdfunding. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that portion out. That, go back to the scripture. Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore thou shalt serve thy enemies, which the Most High shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Considering that we can't even feed ourselves, I'll say that we are quite destroyed. Go to another article. The name of this article is Black Bottom Neighborhood. I know pretty much everybody in Detroit know about the Black Bottom, but I don't know if some of our Georgia people, y'all probably wouldn't know about this one too much. Black Bottom was a predominantly Black neighborhood in Detroit, Michigan, demolished for redevelopment in the late 1950s to the early 1960s and replaced with Lafayette Park residential district and a freeway. It was located on Detroit's near east side, bounded by Gratiot Avenue, Brush Street, the Detroit River, and the Grand Trunk Railroad. An adjacent area that extended north of Gratiot, known as Paradise Valley, was considered a different, though overlapping neighborhood where most businesses and entertainment venues were located. Historically, the area of the Black Bottom was part of the riverbed of River Savoyard, which was buried as a sewer in 1827. So our thriving neighborhood, they built the park and ran a freeway through it and destroyed it because, that was one of the few areas in Detroit that Black people were allowed to live. Though by the 50s, migration transformed Hastings and St. Antoine Street into the city's major African-American community of Black-owned business, social institutions, and nightclubs, nationally famous for their music scene in Paradise Valley. Hastings Street is where Aretha Franklin's father, the Reverend C.L. Franklin, first opened his New Bethel Baptist Church. Businesses included 10 restaurants, 8 grocers, 17 physicians, and 6 drugstores. Barthwell Drugs being one of the well-known enterprises. So you see that where we live, we shopped and we ate, and we partied, and we got our medicine. But, they looked too good, so they tore it down and ran a freeway through it. My next article, I got to get a Hispanics, Northern Kingdom, some attention. The name of this one is Detroit Mexican Town, a Century of Latin Culture. Just drop down to the point. Though the first few decades of Mexican Town were a prosperous time for Detroit's Latin community, all this began to change in the latter part of the century. In the 1960s, plans to develop new interstate eventually led to the bisecting of the Mexican district. Entire neighborhoods were bulldozed to accommodate the path of I-75, and many Mexican locals sold their businesses and properties to the Michigan Department of Transportation in the ensuing construction. And just to touch on some of the wordplay they use here, they saying many Mexicans sold their businesses. When they do these type of things, it's not optional. It's a law called, it's eminent domain. So basically, if they get the pull and the go ahead, the government, they force you to sell. It's not an option. More room was to come in the 1970s when General Motors closed 3 of their major auto plants in Southwest Detroit, substantially reducing the amount of well-paying blue-collar jobs. Though these events took their toll on many of the immigrant communities, Mexican Town and many other communities continued to survive throughout the Motor City. So this hit the Hispanics pretty hard too. Same freeway. It's not by coincidence that I-75 runs through, Mexican Town and through Black Bottom and Paradise Valley. This is intentional. Go back to the scriptures. Book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against our people and consulted against our hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that's what they did. They cut our communities off. They cut off our finances, our sources of income, our food, all our businesses. So what should we be doing? We should be trying to separate again. You know, we shouldn't just stay integrated. We need to separate. This book of Revelation, chapter 18, verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yah hath remembered her iniquity. So the Most High, he gonna remember all of this, and he gonna pay it back double. Let me get that actually. Verse 6. Reward her even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled to her double. So yeah, the Most High, he go remember all this destruction and wrath, and he go destroy them just like how they destroyed us, but double. We get one more scripture. So we should do what the Israelites were doing when they were in Egypt. You know, they didn't live amongst the heathen. They didn't live amongst the Egyptians. The book of Exodus. Yeah. Book of Exodus, chapter 8, verse 22. And I will sever in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Most High in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. So when we were in Egypt, the Most High, we lived separate from the Egyptians. We had our own area, our own portion of Egypt that we lived in. And when the Most High brought plagues on Egypt, they didn't touch us because we were not living amongst the Egyptians. You know, so we got to separate from this oppressor, separate from all these other nations. So we can miss out on these plagues, and the Most High can have mercy on us. And with that, I'd like to say, Kal Halal to the Most High, and Shalom.